Welcome to episode 2 of the Bonapartist podcast. Today I want to dive deeply into the rise of Bonapartism and Caesarism predicted by German philosopher Oswald Spengler. In his 1919 book, Decline of the West, Oswald Spengler argues that human societies follow a predictable cycle of growth, maturity, decline, and eventual death. To Spengler, civilizations are like living, breathing organisms with a set lifespan. Spengler departs from what he sees as the Eurocentric view of history that views distinct cultures turned civilizations as being one of perpetual growth and development. In particular, he rejects what he considers to be the ridiculous ancient, medieval, modern view of history. Spengler instead argues that all high cultures in history can be broken up into two subsections: cultural phases and civilization phases. The culture phase is the phase where, also known as the spring and summer period, where art and creativity flourishes within a particular culture. For antiquity, in particular classical Greece, we see this in the molding and the fusion of the Apollonian and the Dionysian aspects portrayed most famously in Greek tragedy. This is a concept for those who are fans of Nietzsche. This is a concept that was first put forward by Friedrich Nietzsche, who deeply inspired Spengler. So culture is when a society creates the best fruits and its highest art form. It's a period of growth, but of, one could say, almost spontaneity and chaos mixed in with the order. And then you have civilizations. The civilization phase of a high culture is when it enters its decline. And this decline is best perpetuated by, instead of artistic growth from within, the growth within stops and there's simply just a mere expansion outward. But the society, the home society, forgets its true roots and forgets where it came from, and instead goes to what you would call a rationalist view of humanity in view of their culture that has no respect for any type of mystic or esoteric or religious foundation, and it just sees things only in the rational, only in through dialectical means. This is what happened to the Greeks and the Romans, and now it's happening in the West. So argues Oswald Spengler. So Caesarism, Bonapartism, whatever type of ism you want to attach it to, is a type of political situation where people attach themselves, become disillusioned with the current political order, most of the time democracies, at least in the modern context, in this rationalist worldview. People get disillusioned with democracies and then attach themselves to charismatic strongmen who break the tide between the political ideologies. So how does this occur? Why does democracy, in at least in Spengler's eyes, leads always to this type of outcome? Well, to Spengler, democracy is a clear sign of civilizational decay, because he believes that democracy is little more than a tool for moneyed interest. We see it today, of course, with enormous amounts of money spent on political hacks, political campaigns, and think tanks and other types of organizations that do nothing all day but promote their agenda. And their goal is to enrich themselves and their powerful backers at the expense of the common man, like myself or like you, my fellow listeners. American society is most definitely in its death throes. I don't think there's much dispute about that at this point, where we see the heightened political divisions and the growing inequality between the rich and the poor. Spangler knew that democracy was only a tool for the moneyed interest, and the fact of the matter is that political representatives have no interest in maintaining the happiness of their constituencies, only the rich and powerful. So, according to Spangler, the last 2 centuries of any civilization is marked by the rise of a Caesar or Napoleonic type of leader. That is a charismatic and forceful type of politician who goes above and beyond to destroy the political establishment, and the democracy is effectively destroyed, or at least the functionaries are kept, but the actual political process is kept in the secure hands of the new Caesar or Napoleon type of leader. You can see this in the rise of Napoleon himself. He clearly destroyed the most radical forms of the revolution, did not really strive to create a new type of political revolution, but he did try to expand the boundaries of the revolution outward, but most importantly, to keep France safe and powerful and to keep his position strong, destroyed many of the old states, such as the Holy Roman Empire, the Republic of Venice, and ultimately destroyed the Papal States. And the old medieval system really had its final death blow with him and him alone. America, which was brought up definitely and was born in the winter of the era of Western civilization, has never had a spring season. It has never really had a type of cultural growth. Instead, it has always had strong men come and go before in history. Two of the perhaps most famous are those of Andrew Jackson and Abraham Lincoln. Jackson, one might argue, even more important than Lincoln in the sense of he set the political tone for the decades after his death, and he truly created his own era. We don't call it the age of Jackson for nothing. The 21st century, on the other hand, has not had a leader like Jackson till Trump comes along. Now, Trump, for his part, while in many ways mimicking the rhetoric and some of Jackson's persona, was simply too weak and did not have a clear agenda in mind, at least one not strong enough to truly break the back of the old political establishment permanently. That is why he inevitably lost. But the movement that he created still moves on. And I have no doubt that American civilization is ripe for its Caesar-esque type of person. It's important to recognize, however, that the rise of a Caesar or Napoleonic individual does not mean that the civilization will descend into anarchy. Far from it. It is just simply the sign of a rebirth of a new culture that will emerge. And hopefully on the American continent, on this continent, a true civilization will have its spring and summer and come out of its long, dark winter. For Spangler writes, the coming of Caesarism breaks down the dictature of money and its political weapon, democracy. After a long triumph of world, city, economy, and its interest over political, creative force, the political side of life manifests itself after all as the stronger of the two. The sword is victorious over the money. The master will subdues again. The plunder will. Even in history, it is life, and life only, race, quality, the triumph of the will to power, and not the victory of truths, discoveries, or money that signifies. World history is in the world court, and it has never decided in favor of the stronger, fuller, and more self-assured life decreed to it, namely the right to exist, regardless of whether its right would hold before the tribunal of waking world consciousness.